First of all, I want to just say how nice it is to be here, to be a gay Arab-American Buddhist, and to have all three of those aspects of my identity just be so welcomed here that you gave me the mic. And although I'm not going to be talking about koans, I developed this. I was so deeply moved by what was happening all across North Africa. In particular, I think the American media focused in on Egypt, but there are all kinds of countries that are involved in this new revolution that I think is going to impact the world for many, many years to come. And I'm from Malta, and we speak a dialect of Arabic there, so I identify as Arab American. And it's an interesting time to be identified as an Arab American, to be sure. And Malta's, I don't know if you heard, but had a little bit of involvement. There were a couple of, when Gaddafi was trying to stop the protests that were happening in Libya, a couple of jets, a couple of pilots actually asked for asylum in Malta and landed their planes in Malta because they didn't want to bomb their own people. And Malta allowed that to happen. And then, of course, there was, the no-fly zone that occurred and Obama initiated. And, I'm happy to say, proud to say, actually, that Malta did not vote with that bombing. So, in that case, we weren't attracted or aversive. We were neutral. It's kind of a nice thing. So, there was a lot of information about Tahrir, and it just seemed to come, and then it sort of disappeared from the American media's view. Although we hear a little bit here and there, but there's all kinds of things consistently going on. And it wasn't, actually the people in Egypt talk about this, a breeze of jasmine that came from Tunisia, actually, that overwhelmed them, that started the protests in Tahrir. So it really did start in Tunisia, and then there's Yemen, Bahrain, Iran, Iraq, Libya, of course, Algeria, Morocco, Jordan, and this isn't even to mention sub-Saharan Africa. So it's just the entire crown of North Africa seems to be on fire. And I can't help but think, and I might be wrong, but it certainly seems like there was a connection in the timing between what was going on in North Africa and all the attention that Egypt was getting, and then Wisconsin here in our country, and that huge overtaking of the capital and the work to try to stop Governor Walker from taking away workers' rights, etc. So, if there's anything that you come out of today with, I hope you'll recognize that I just see it all as so very connected, that really we're all one in this. And so I'd like to start, if you would, just to partner up with someone and just take a couple of minutes each. And Christopher, if you would be so kind and ring the bell after 2 minutes, that way you guys will know to switch. And I have a prompt, and that would be, what effect has the revolution in North Africa or any of those countries had on you, is having on you, on your emotions or your worldview? And if that particular freedom movement is not on your radar screen, what other liberation movement has strongly impacted your life? So 2 minutes each. I'm sure that many of you saw on Facebook or in the media, there's just all kinds of images that have come across about these freedom fighters in North Africa. And I've been very deeply moved by all that's occurred. It's really just sort of, right to my core, I've felt this energy that was going on there. And I really wanted to bring the images of these freedom fighters into the room. So I just have a slideshow here. These images might be familiar to you. You might have seen them at some time. But I ask you here for all of us to bear witness as a community. And they would just be maybe a review for some of you and maybe new to some of you. But they're really very powerful and profound. A part of what has astounded me and is not atypical to Arab American culture is that in the midst of all this turmoil and struggling, there is still such a strong sense of humor. While he's on the phone here. This is a lovely image of all the different protests that are going on in Tahrir Square. I want to call my mom, but of course, you know, they had done away with all the internet and all the phone lines, you know. This one is a particularly profound Egypt, you know, spelled with all the icons from the internet.
Wow.
Yes. Powerful. Very powerful. And then who's afraid of Twitter? Freedom is contagious, spread the word. This is actually, I went to several solidarity demonstrations at the United Nations Plaza in San Francisco. So this is a San Franciscan photo. That's Tahrir. And then all kinds of people from all walks of life involved. And this whole notion of suffering, that somehow it just seems so parallel to Buddhism and what the Buddhist scriptures teach. We are all Egyptians. There's the title. That's what I call this one. And there's Tahrir Square. And I just wanted to take a moment with this photo because, you know, where are the lavatories and where's the medical clinic and the child care center where you go for food, the remarkable open space where everybody is saying their daily prayers, the pharmacy, the main stage. There's a wall for the martyrs that gave up their lives in the context of this struggle, that actually they created this little village that was organized around their own needs in order to create this, to make this statement. It's just so systematic and organized. And those of us that have been in liberation movements or, you know, Gay Pride we just did, you know, a month ago, whatever, they're just doing it this weekend in San Diego. It does take a lot of organization. It does. It requires that. This one is the one that really touches and moves my heart so much because, again, this systematic approach. There were like 5 lines, right? And the first line to fight off the thugs that were trying to repress the protest was all these burnt out cars, and they lined them all up as a shield, right? And behind the cars was the first line of stone throwers. That's all they had, right? To fight back was the first line of stone throwers. And then behind them was a second line, and these stone throwers were back up to the first line. So if your arm got tired, you got to fall back, and somebody would replace you immediately, right? Then, what would be the fourth line then, was the people that were bringing the stones to the stone throwers, right? So the people that were carrying the artillery. And then this is the fifth line, in fact, because the elders in the community were actually breaking up the pavement to create the ammunition. They used what they had to get what they wanted. And of course, prayer never stopped. It was an integrated aspect. Their spiritual practice was integrated into this every day, 4 or 5 times a day. And there's the crown of North Africa. Those are all icons that indicate either, you can find it on the web, where there was a protest of some sort, and some of them have video clips, others have news articles or photographs, and they all indicate that something happened and was documented. Because, you know, we've always said for many years the revolution will not be televised. Well, that's not true anymore, you know. Now it is, in fact, that these little cell phones and whatever, they videotape the whole thing, right? It's remarkable how we've changed. Today we are Egyptian, tomorrow we will all be free. Now this is the diaspora. People in countries that are that were demonstrating in support. This is another San Francisco shot of the people there, and here's JFK. People who make peaceful protest impossible will make violent protest inevitable. And here's an echo of the Obama, yes we can, against San Francisco, and that's Tahrir. Again, San Francisco. I love this photo. And this is Tahrir again, and this is when the military came in. And it's interesting because it's hard to determine exactly what their relationship with the military was. The military was not the hired thugs that Mubarak brought out to protest, or to repel the protest, or to suppress the protest. The ones that came on camel. I heard someone speak recently, and she said actually that they overtook those guys on the camels, and then they had the camels and they were giving kids rides on the camels. So that was, it was not long-lived. And here you see this guy in military, and it's hard to tell, but you know, one would think that he's certainly not going to be angry with that entire crowd, that actually he might be in solidarity with them, in fact, even though he represents the military, right? There it is. Millions. And here, so after all of this, that really what they did was they went from this autocracy that had been going on for centuries, and within 5 weeks, their systematic approach to liberation got them to vote. In 5 weeks, they were voting on constitutional amendments. Here's an 80-year-old man that has never voted in his life before March, right? And there's that. In the Quran, it states, it quotes God as saying, Allah, as saying, I will not change the conditions of people until they change what is in themselves. You know, so interesting and so parallel to what we try to do here. You know, we actually sit to try to recognize what's going on that's standing in the way of our own liberation, and hopefully be able to notice it so that it no longer stands in the way. There's a marvelous video clip by this young Egyptian woman who is just such an inspiration, an activist out of Tahrir Square. And I'm hoping that you'll be able to hear it as well as see it.
Just to have your thoughts on the situation today. How do you feel that?
The situation is very obvious. The Ministry of Interior unleashed all the thugs to destroy the cities. So people would say that they still need the regime. We don't want the regime. We want either a constitutional amendment or something that says that the next president of Egypt will be chosen by the people. When we say we don't want the regime, it doesn't mean we don't want Hosni Mubarak as a person and be stuck with someone else who's imposed on us. We want to choose our president because we want to take this country into the future.
Tomorrow there is talk of a 1 million man march.
Oh yeah, everybody's coming. I'm coming for sure, and everybody I know is coming. And we're going to keep demonstrating peacefully. Even if we get attacked by the police forces, we are peaceful, and we're going to keep on protesting peacefully until our demands are met.
There is talk of The authorities closing the roads into Cairo.
The Egyptian youth are protecting their own homes. They are coming together and they are uniting, and everybody is coming together to protect their areas and their homes. We don't need the thugs of the police force to protect our own homes. We have proven that we can keep this country safe from the harm of, that they cause for us, and we have proven that we can take this country forward. People are cleaning the streets. The scouts are cleaning the streets. We want to keep this country safe. They want to destroy it. So we're not going anywhere until our demands are met.
So you think whatever they do tomorrow to stop people from coming to Cairo?
We are really hoping that what we've been hearing about the police force not interacting with the peaceful protesters, we hope that is true. We will be peaceful all the way, and they need to respect that and let us protest peacefully.
What has been the effect of shutting down the internet? Do you think it has slowed down?
Apparently, the effect, it had an opposite effect, because people really did depend on the internet, and it was an unprovoked thing from the government to do. And even though they shut down the internet, this is not just a Facebook revolution or an internet revolution. As you've seen, hundreds of thousands of people in the street, even though the phones even the phone lines were shut on Friday, and people still came out and demonstrated, because this is not about the internet, this is about the needs and the demands of the Egyptian people.
Are you afraid that they might do something to stop it?
They tried and they couldn't, and it's either they let us protest peacefully or else people are going to stick by their word and stick by their demand and not be broken up, because we have had it, and it's either they answer our demands or we are not leaving this square no matter what.
Is there a compromise that people would accept? Something that Mubarak might do?
The only compromise people would accept is that if there's a guarantee that the next president of Egypt will be chosen by the people.
But you would accept like a transition period if he promises that?
It needs a transition period. There's no way this would happen without a transition period.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Wow, powerful, isn't it? You know, it's sort of like with the helicopters overhead, you know, it's sort of like, what are the helicopters of our minds, you know, when we sit in meditation that try to interrupt us. And she so reminds me of the Buddha. We're not leaving until we're free. You know, it just reminds me of that, you know, 2,700 years ago, when he got under the Bodhi tree and he said, I'm not getting up until I awaken, right? I am not getting up until I awaken, and that's exactly what she said. We're not leaving. We're not leaving. We're staying put. So it seems to me that, you know, our Buddhist meditation practice is parallel peaceful protest, really. You know, every time we return to the breath, we're saying no to those forces that stand in the way of our own liberation, right? And we protest those crazy ideas that come up, or our habitual responses and distractions, you know, that cause suffering for us and maybe those we hold dear. You know. We question the truth of those ideas, you know, and we protest the idle chatter that's incessantly going on, you know, that's often getting us nowhere, sort of gets us in a spin. And we question the authority of it and the truth of our knee-jerk responses, habitual responses constantly in our lives. And so, you know, in our own way, we're demonstrating against the status quo up here, you know, maybe in here too, right? We are demonstrating against the status quo because we want to be free. I remember being a young gay activist. I couldn't have been 19 when Gay Liberation Front happened. We're talking 1971, right? We've been at it for a while here. And I remember thinking, you know, I don't want to have to die and get freedom in the next life. I want to be free this life, you know. That was my insistence at 19. And here we are. And at the same time, you know, the parallel between how she spoke, and it so echoes Buddhism to me, you know, that I can't help but think about the sort of the radical interconnectivity of it all, you know. In outlaw culture, Bell Hooks states, many of us are motivated to move against domination solely when we feel our self-interest directly threatened. This is why we desperately need an ethic of love to intervene in our self-centered longing for change. Until we are all able to accept the interlocking, interdependent nature of systems of domination, we will continue to act in ways that undermine our individual quest for freedom and collective liberation struggles. Beautifully said, you know. And we know that MLK was inspired by Gandhi, you know. And then, you know, the African American civil rights movement in this country, which stands as a model for most, if not all, of the liberation struggles in this country, had to have inspired Egypt. And then after it went across the Atlantic, it actually came back to Wisconsin. So really, it's sort of this global, this universal longing for freedom. And they all have the same desire within each of us, actually. And we're all on that same path. So that woman I said that talked about the camels, and they took over the camels and then turned them into amusement rides for the kids. Her name is Ahdaf Suwaif, and she's the author of The Map of Love. And she gave the Edward Said Memorial Lecture at Columbia this year. She said, almost overnight, a civic space was created in Tahrir Square, an ideal space that everybody imagined was how the country should be, or how any country should be. People were really careful with each other. People were overly courteous. People were bringing things to offer. You did not go to Tahrir without something to offer, whether it was cookies, your effort, water, medicines for the field hospitals. In other words, everyone was finding the best in themselves and putting it forward. And, you know, that's so much like what we have here. You know, we all move in such kindness in this meditation community, you know. So, you know, I would like for us to break into dyads again, and I would encourage you this time to find someone that you did not speak with before, to find another partner. If it means a little movement around, we can handle that. And the prompt this time is, well, what are the mubaraks of your mind? You know? What behaviors or thought patterns stand in the way of your own personal liberation? What do you do to free yourself of them? What Egyptian revolution is going on right now inside your mind or heart? And we'll take maybe 2.5 minutes each this time. So I thank you so much. You know, it's always so delightful to see the room light up in conversation, you know. This, the interconnection here that we have is also beautiful to behold. It's interesting if you were to compare, or by comparing this Arab Spring to our own personal practice, you know? Because they didn't show up on Sunday afternoon for an hour and a half, you know, and then went on with their lives. They actually lived in Tahrir. And I know most of you know that Tahrir is the liberation square. Tahrir means liberation. It was established in the Revolution of '67 there, you know. They actually, it was as if they went on a residential retreat, isn't it? You know, that they actually dug their heels in and they were doing it 24/7, whatever their resolve was. You know, in Maltese we say, Amluweda. You know, they made a promise to themselves and to each other. And that's kind of what we do on retreat. We're quiet, we move through, you know, you sit and walk, you know. I'm curious about that practice because I know we all do this, but how many people have done like a 3-day residential retreat? And how many people have done 5 or 7 days? 9 days or 2 weeks, and a month or more.
Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting, you know, and I wouldn't ever want you to think that it is only on retreat that we can come to liberation, because that is distinctly not true. You know, we do not put our lives on hold. The opportunity for liberation is with each breath of our lives, right? We do not have to go somewhere special. And until we go there, we're waiting for it to happen. No, that's not it at all. But there is something about concentrated practice. And here, you know, an autocracy, generational, you know, went in 5 weeks to a democracy. You know, they did get what they wanted from their practice, right? And I believe that we can too. So it's an inspiration. And, you know, the invitation is, what is it that gets you to your own personal liberation? You know, we protest the barriers of our own capacity to relax, because it's through relaxation we get to the concentration, you know. And then we vow, just like they did, we vow to end the suffering in our own lives. You know, we vow to end the suffering in the lives of those we hold dear. And many of us vow, especially in the context of this Hartford Street Center, they take the Bodhisattva vows to end the suffering of everyone, everywhere. And every week here, you know, we dedicate our practice to the cessation of suffering of all living beings, you know. So we're all in this together, you know. And I think that we learn in our own practice and our move towards liberation that the more we do it, the longer we stay, right? Because this is really our sit-in, isn't it? This is our little tahrir, isn't it? The longer we stay, the easier then it is to recognize those distractions when they come, right? You notice them sooner, right? They are less compelling, right? The easier it is to return to your own concentration and back to your own path towards liberation without the distraction. They aren't as tantalizing as they were, you know, depending on how long you've been practicing. For me, I notice that it's like, oh, okay, come back. Oh, okay, come back. But I notice quicker, and I come back with greater ease, right? Yes. And then, of course, when we're caught up, because sometimes we are human, we get swept up, it's like we don't necessarily act. It's like, oh, what am I feeling? What's going on here? I'm not going to do anything about it at this moment. I'm going to sit with this for a sec, right? I do not have to act necessarily, right? So we don't have those habitual responses. And then, you know, when we do, we try to move mindfully if we can, you know, as best we can. This adds spaciousness to our lives in the same way that that Liberation Square and all the efforts in North Africa, they're just trying to add spaciousness to their lives too, right? No different. And, you know, there's certainly this, and for me it's not really an issue of faith. My meditation practice has distinctly demonstrated less suffering in my life. It just does. That's not to say doubt doesn't arise or the other hindrances, you know, but the truth is that the liberation process is more palpable for me in meditation practice. And, you know, so I really do believe it's possible, because I started 10 years ago. You know, certainly this is just a new sort of, a new methodology for my liberation. I've been working on liberation since I was 19, right? But the truth is that in this time in my life, you know, it is not a matter of faith that liberation is possible. It's that the practice has demonstrated this in a real way in my life, right? And I see now that I can recognize what's going on in my mind more readily, that I have more options than I had before. Desmond Tutu says, our march to freedom is unstoppable. One last video clip and then our multimedia will be done. This is from a fellow named Wasim Wagdi. And he's in Egypt. He's an Egyptian in England.
We are here, I think, for two reasons. We are here to show solidarity with the heroes on the streets in Egypt. We are here to show solidarity with the political prisoners in Egypt. We are here to show solidarity with the workers who declared an open strike and a sit-in until bringing down the regime of Mubarak. And we are here to celebrate a new dawn a new dawn for the Egyptian people, a new dawn for freedom, a new dawn, a new society in the whole region, not in Egypt. This is something that every single human being who cares for freedom, who wants to live in a more human society and a more humane society, has to celebrate. We are here to do this. It's something I had hoped, against all hope, to happen in my lifetime. And I had hoped, and I think with millions of people, that our children will live in a more human society. But this society, we are lucky enough that the heroes in Egypt are making today. They are not waiting for our children to dream. They are bringing all of our dreams through today. In Suez, in the factories, in Midan al-Tahrir, the biggest square in the Arab world is being liberated today from this regime. I can't hear you, it's just... I'm proud to be Egyptian today. I can say this. And I'm proud of all Egyptians today. I'm proud of the masses who are cleansing Egypt of the dirt, of the criminals who have been oppressing us. I'm proud of all the Egyptians who are cleansing themselves of all remnants of fear. I'm proud of an Egyptian people and of the masses who collectively and singly have raised their head up high, and no one will bring it down again. No one. No one. I have to say in Arabic first. أناديكم أشد على أيديكم وأبوس الأرض تحت نعالكم وأقول أفديكم. I call on you. I call upon you out there. I kiss the dust under your feet. You say this to the masses of Egypt, to the heroes today.
It's very touching, isn't it? You know, this very deeply, passionately connected involvement with the liberation struggle, you know, that I know we all feel. He speaks for all of us, you know. Those moments when, especially when we feel so held back, you know. And it's interesting because here we are as a group of people, you know, maybe we sit at home alone, but we often come and sit and practice together. And then, you know, certainly Tahrir Square was a remarkable demonstration of Sangha, right? Community coming together to create change, you know. And Thich Nhat Hanh says, it is possible that the next Buddha will not take the form of an individual. The next Buddha may take the form of a community practicing understanding and loving kindness, a community practicing mindful living. This may be the most important thing we can do for the earth. It's very radical, isn't it? You know, certainly 1969, when we had just had enough down in Stonewall, that was all radical behavior, you know, that started our GLBT liberation movement, you know. And the Buddha was very radical 2,700 years ago in India, which was so embedded with this remarkable caste system. You know, the untouchables could not even look at a Brahmin. They would get molten lead poured in their ears if they looked at a Brahmin. And he said, no, everybody can be free, not just the Brahmins. We can all be free. Remarkably radical. And radical too, what was going on in Tahrir, saying we're not leaving, you know. And I can't help but think that, our coming here today is somewhat radical too. Given, it was a lovely day and you made the choice to be here for one thing, but there's a million of distractions out there, but we came to practice and tried to work with our own liberation. So, let's see, it's 4:20, and I actually have family arriving from out of town today, but I could take a couple of questions now, if you have them. Yes?
Following the liberation of Egypt, there's still a lot of struggle going on, and particularly I'm aware of conflict between Copts and other religious groups. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts about what's happening now and what's happening in Bahrain and Syria. It's sort of an ongoing what happens after. And yeah, I don't know if that's too broad of a question, just whatever interests you about that.
Well, I think, and I appreciate the question very much, because the truth is that you're still keeping it alive, And the truth is that that crown of North Africa is still happening in a big way. And the repression is still happening, and the movements towards liberation are still happening. And it's sort of like, the American media has attention deficit disorder. We can't pay attention to anything for too long, Even switching countries, that doesn't work, It's sort of like, we did that in March, that's kind of over now. Let's see, whatever else we can pay attention to, whatever might interest the public, But the truth is that in the context of that, this is the first noble truth. Suffering is there. And, there are the causes of suffering, the police that you're talking about maybe against the protesters and or whatever. But there's the third and fourth also. And that is that happiness, that liberation is possible. And there are likewise causes for those as well. The truth is that they all happen simultaneously, right? And it's not the eradication of one that allows for the other. It's that they just arise simultaneously. In the same way that you might feel sad and burst out laughing in the same day. It happens, They're not a contradiction in and of themselves. They all exist, And I just, the invitation is to pay some attention to, what's still going on there, because, it's trickling in here and there, and it's very important. I can't help but think that this is an international revolution that is going to have an impact for a long time.
I just want to make sure I don't need a response, but I meant COPTS, COPS.
Oh yes, yes. Yes, the for and against. Yes.
I was looking in here, like in finding our collective courage, and our individual courage. And I went to a rally in support of Obama's healthcare plan, and there was a group of protesters across the street with placards and signs. And my heart so wanted to walk over to them and just shake their hands. And I stood at the street for a long time looking at them, and I stopped because I didn't want the people on my side to think badly of me. And it's been a great regret that I didn't use my own courage and what my heart was telling me to cross over. And this just reminded me again of in the midst of something, to bring our own personal courage to who we are and to the moment.
Yes, and have compassion for yourself, that you're hoping to be to follow your convictions. We all do every day, and we cannot, not every day, but maybe next time. So, beautiful intention. And even having the intention already creates the space for that, for it to occur the next time. Yes.
I am personalizing the question, but I really mean it in a sense to be inclusive. But how does your practice support their struggle for freedom? How can one of us, any of us, practice in a way that, there are many ways to support them, but seeing as we are quite isolated physically, and how does a Buddhist, Do you get my drift?
I do actually. You know, and it's a wonderful question, and I thank you for it. And the truth is that I believe, because of the interdependence, that every time I sit down to try to quiet my mind, I am supporting them. The world, my world, is a little more peaceful when I practice meditation. Our world today was a little more peaceful as we sat here in silence. And so we generated more peace in the world. And it's parallel to what's going on over there. Sometimes, you know, that's not to say that we're passive. I don't think peaceful, you know, it's not, we are peaceful protesters, but we're still protesters, yes? It's not a passive thing that's happening. We're actually very active about it. But I like to think that whatever it is we do to increase the peace in our own lives increases peace all across the world. And then, of course, you know, there's always the metta practice. You know, I mean, I made a vow that when Obama was elected, that I would do a metta prayer for him every day. May he be safe and free of harm. You know, and the same is true, that may Egypt be safe and free of harm. Bahrain, Yemen, you know, wherever it's going on, that we actually can put the intention out there that's parallel to our convictions, just like yours were that day, to well wish, you know, without being attached necessarily to outcomes, but to do what we can to, you know, encourage the movement towards freedom.
Thank you. I just also wanted to add that the phrase "we were all Egyptian" reminded me of a phrase of Alice Walker's 20 years ago, when the feminist movement they were trying to discredit them by saying, well, they're all lesbians. No, they were. So Alice Walker said, we are all lesbian. And there was such truth to that statement, because it's almost like the lesbian isn't your enemy. It's like, we're all your enemy. You know, I mean, we're a much greater force.
Yes.
And that was how she solidified herself with her sisters. And, you know, it was just very powerful. And I think that phrase, we are all Egyptian, is a way that we can also support them in our practice.
Right, and you know, it demonstrates also our interconnectivity, right? That their struggle is not over there. It hurts my heart too to see this, you know, that that we are really all connected. And so until, you know, the age-old is that no one's free until we're all free, right? I cannot be free until you are free. And so there's that interconnection, you know. One last one.
Okay, I was just going to comment that I was feeling that actually a sense of liberation from having been here and seeing this, what you do, what you're doing, and that's kind of an answer to your question in a way. It's to, and then there's other ways, people that are witnesses and people that educate themselves about what's going on in the world and all of that. You know, it's contagious in some way.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Freedom is contagious.
Yeah.
Thank you.